What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Greatest Season Podcast, your go-to podcast for everything Chicago Bears, NFL, fantasy football. Today we're talking about my draft dreams for the Chicago Bears, and this is really an important draft. It's going to set the tones for the Chicago Bears and Ben Johnson's tenure here in Chicago, and I really think it really is going to be important for Ryan Poles as well, because in my opinion, he should be on the hot seat after how the Bears have performed during his time and his lack of addressing certain positions. So let's get really right into it. We have the 10th pick in the first round, and in my opinion, Will Campbell, if he's on the board, let's take him. The only people I'd rather have instead of Will Campbell are Ashton Jeanty and Mason Graham, really, or Abdul Carter, but we know that's not going to happen. I really don't think any of those three are going to fall to us at the 10th seed, and that's why I have Will Campbell. There's been some, I would say, overreaction about his arm length and his ability to play left tackle in the NFL. And, I think his film speaks for itself. His time at LSU, he was outstanding. And not only was he an outstanding player, I think he was outstanding off the field, which is exactly what Chicago needs. We need to build a foundation of a good team, not just, players and their talent, but as a culture, because that's really what Ben Johnson is trying to change in Chicago right now, is the culture. And, I think Will Campbell at 10 is an absolute steal. In my opinion, he really should be a top 5 pick. However, this year's draft, there's some teams that will probably be taking quarterbacks earlier than they should be taken. And that leaves better talent to get pushed down. So if the Bears keep the 10th pick and we don't trade up, and Ashton Jeanty, Mason Graham aren't there, I think Will Campbell is the best pick we can make at number 10, and I would be absolutely ecstatic to see that happen. Then moving on, we have the 39th pick. So we have 2 second-round picks. We got 39 and 41. And at 39, I think Tylik Williams, the defensive tackle out of Ohio State, is exactly what the Bears need up front. He's a wrecking ball on the interior. Him with Andrew Billings together would be a great duo, and we need some depth. Right now, our D-line there is no depth. We have some great players. We got Montez Sweat. We got Deo Ingamunga. I don't know how to say his name, so sorry if I butchered that. And we got Andrew Billings. After that, it is a lot of unproven players that we really have not seen play well in the NFL. They might have been good in college, but at this point, we don't really have much depth, and Tylik Williams is a plug and play. I think him and Andrew Billings together would be exactly what we need. He's going to get penetration. He's a good pass rusher, and he's actually good at playing the run, which is exactly what we need on that interior D-line, so we can not be one of the worst run defenses in the NFL, which the Bears normally are not. So, and I think Dennis Allen is really going to turn that around, and that's why I think Tylik Williams at 39, it might be a little high on him, but I think he's well worth it at 39. I don't think there's much risk involved. I think he's a well-polished interior D-lineman. Then moving on, we got 41. I'm going to butcher this name too, but it's Princely Umanamilan. He's an edge, and, out of Ole Miss, I think he's a freak athlete. I watched some film on this kid, and man, is he just amazing. He has twitch, bend, and a quick first step, which is exactly what we need opposite of Montez Sweat. He's going to be given him with Deo and Montez. I think that's a great rotation, and they're all kind of versatile. We can play them around, and we can get creative. And Dennis Allen, he's been known to do that in New Orleans, and I really think that he can use a guy like Princely very well on that defensive line to be successful, in the NFL, and to really, with Austin Booker too, I think that gives us a pretty good rotation at edge to where that is addressed for the immediate future. Obviously, there may be some big swings for some superstars, but I think Princely at 41 is a great pick, and I think he's a younger, faster, and meaner version of Yannick Ngakoue, who we had on our team a couple years ago, and he didn't play very well. So I think that was what I would like to see. And then moving on to our 4th round pick, I got Ty Felton, the wide receiver out of Maryland. Man, he's quick. That 4.37 40 time is exactly what we need. He averages over 17 yards per catch at his time in Maryland. And, I really think this is a Jameson Williams type player for Ben Johnson. He's going to be very creative on how he gets him the ball, and I think he can easily slide into the wide receiver 3 position for the Chicago Bears. I also think Tyler Scott is due for a better year. He's going to get more opportunities. Really, it's obviously DJ Moore and Rome Odunze as our 2 starters. And then after that, we did sign Devin Duvernay and Olamide Zaccheaus. I think those are great depth players to have, and they can give some solid minutes on special teams as well. However, I think a guy like Ty Felton out of Maryland is going to fit what Ben Johnson is trying to do in Chicago, and I think that he's a young player that brings pop the top off kind of speed that we don't really have on the offense in general. I mean, I'd say DeAndre Swift is probably our biggest pop the top off kind of guy. DJ Moore, I would say, he's our best player on offense, and that's a given. But I think between him and DeAndre, they're really our only two that are going to break something big. But Ty Felton, I think, is really a great pick in the 4th round for the Bears, and I think it provides some depth at wide receiver as well. And moving on, so for our 5th pick, in the 5th round pick, I got Billy Bowman Jr., safety out of Oklahoma. And this is because we need depth at safety. And I think, with the injuries of Jaquan Brisker, Kevin Byard obviously I think he's turning 32 this year. He's getting up there in age. It's his last year on contract with the concussion issues for Jaquan Brisker, who I absolutely love. But I think Billy Bowman can have a season where he rotates in and he plays under Kevin Byard, and he takes over as our premier safety with Jaquan Brisker, assuming he can stay healthy. He's a Swiss Army knife, really, in the secondary. He has great instincts, good football IQ. He's versatile. He can play the run. He's good in pass coverage. He obviously had a down year, I would say, at Oklahoma. It was not a great season for him. I watched some of the film, but we've seen glimpses of how amazing he can be. And if we can snag him in the 5th round, I think it's an absolutely excellent pick for the Bears. And I think it's an excellent, versatile player who can not just play safety, but he might be able to fill in at nickel and then some other positions if need be. And he's a valuable special teams player at the very least. And then we're moving on to our 7th round. We got 2 7th round picks this year. And I know a lot of you are probably thinking, where's the running back? Well, this is the running back I think Ben Johnson's going to wait on. I think he's going to be patient. If we don't get Ashton Genty, I really think he's going to wait. And we're going to get Raheem Sanders. And I call him Raheem the Rocket Sanders, running back out of Arkansas. The dude is an absolute bowling ball. And I think that this would be really the steal of the draft, the steal of the NFL draft, not just the Bears draft. I think the steal of the draft if he falls to the 7th round into our laps. And I think if he doesn't and he's in the 6th, we should probably trade maybe even both of our 7th rounders to get him, because I think he is going to be that good in the NFL. He's a big-bodied, fast running back with explosiveness, good vision, good footwork, and I really think he's being underrated. I have heard he's going up draft boards, but at this point, I really think he's a better, more polished version of Khalil Herbert, who, I was actually a really big fan of. He didn't really get his opportunity to shine in Chicago, but I really think he could be a legit workhorse back, and him and DeAndre Swift with Roschon Johnson rotating in, I think it's an excellent trio, and I really think Raheem could become the premier back in Chicago as a 7th round pick. So we'll see what Ben Johnson ends up doing with that, but I would be really, really, really excited to see him come to Chicago. And then our last pick of the draft, Brandon George, linebacker out of Pittsburgh. This is a late round pick, and I really think Brandon George, after watching some of his film, could fill in perfectly into Dennis Allen's system and into Chicago. Bring back that Monsters of Midway. Got Urlacher sitting right here next to me, my poster from 2007. Brandon George isn't obviously a super flashy pick, but I think he is a very good linebacker with high IQ, and between Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards, he could be excellent in Dennis Allen's system, could be a great rotational piece and provide much needed depth at the position that the Bears need. And, while I think he's not going to be a superstar in the NFL, I do think he's going to give us much valuable minutes and could be given the opportunity to be a superstar. We have seen linebackers in the past, like Zach Bond out of Philly last year, had an absolute career year, and Brandon George is a similar kind of guy. I think he's not super elite in his speed and his skill set, however, his IQ, and he does actually have pretty good sideline to sideline speed. I've seen some of his plays. He's ran down some very good running backs, and I think he can be really what the Bears need at depth at the linebacker position, especially this late in the 7th round. I think he's a great pick at this point in the draft if he's there. So that's really what I got for the Bears draft. I think it's a really exciting time to be a Bears fan. I'm really excited to see how Ben Johnson is going to change this culture in Chicago. That's really what I want to see this year. The wins and losses are obviously great. I just want to beat the Packers and change the culture. And if we can get that and get things on track for next season, I really expect the Bears in 2 to 3 years to be competing heavily not only for the NFC North every year, but honestly even potentially for the NFC title and even into the Super Bowl. We'll see what happens. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Thanks for tuning into my first long form on YouTube. I do have a podcast if you guys want to check it out. It's The Greatest Season. It's on Apple, Spotify, all of those, as well as my shorts. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Peace and love. Have a great day. Take care.